I have loved you for 7 years, Ethan, and staying your best friend is breaking me, Ryan said. His voice was barely louder than the rain pounding against the old boathouse roof. But somehow, I heard every word. I stood 6 feet away from him, soaked through from running across my parents' backyard. My shirt clinging coldly to my shoulders, my heart beating so hard that I could feel it in my throat. Behind us, across nearly 2 acres of wet grass, warm yellow light spilled from my parents' lake house, where 40 members of the Parker family were eating pie, telling embarrassing stories, and probably wondering why Ethan Parker had suddenly chased his best friend into a thunderstorm. None of them knew that my entire life seemed to be balancing on whatever Ryan Mitchell said next. At least, I did not think they knew. Ryan turned toward the dark lake, dragging one hand through his rain-soaked brown hair. I had known that gesture for almost 10 years. He did it when he was nervous, when he was frustrated, when he was trying desperately not to say what he was thinking. Usually I knew exactly what that meant. Tonight, I had no idea. Ryan, he shook his head. Do not. Do not what? Make this harder. I stared at him, completely lost. 40 minutes earlier, we had been sitting beside each other at dinner. 2 hours earlier, he had been laughing with my dad beside the grill. The previous morning, we had spent 4 hours driving from Boston to my parents' place in Vermont, arguing about music and stopping at a gas station because Ryan insisted no road trip counted without terrible coffee and powdered donuts. Everything had been normal. Everything had been us. Now he looked like he was preparing to walk out of my life. If something is wrong, tell me, I said. Ryan gave a quiet laugh without any humor in it. That is the problem, Ethan. There is too much to tell you. Lightning flickered somewhere beyond the lake, briefly illuminating his face, and the expression I saw there made my stomach drop. Ryan was not angry. He was hurting. Somehow, that frightened me more. I stepped closer. Then tell me everything. His eyes finally met mine. For one strange second, the rain, the reunion, the music drifting faintly from the house, all of it seemed to disappear. There was only Ryan, the person who had been beside me through bad dates, career changes, family arguments, birthdays, moving apartments, and every ordinary Tuesday that somehow became memorable because he was there. My safest person, my constant, my best friend. And suddenly I realized I had never once seriously imagined what my life would look like without him. If I say the rest, Ryan whispered, nothing between us can stay the same. I swallowed. Every sensible part of me wanted to retreat into a joke, because jokes were what Ryan and I used whenever conversations wandered too close to something real. But I could not do it this time. Not with him looking at me like that. If you do not tell me, I said, I think I am going to lose you anyway. Ryan went completely still. His lips parted as if the next words had been waiting years to escape. And maybe they had. But to understand why my best friend and I were standing in a Vermont boathouse during a summer storm, terrified that one honest sentence could destroy 10 years of friendship, you have to understand something first. 36 hours earlier, I thought taking Ryan Mitchell to my family reunion was the safest decision I had ever made. 36 hours before the storm, Ryan Mitchell was standing in my kitchen at 7:30 in the morning, holding 2 paper cups of coffee and looking at me like I had personally offended him. You packed 3 shirts for an entire weekend, he said. 4, I corrected, reaching for the cup with my name written across the lid. I am wearing one. Ryan glanced at my faded gray t-shirt. That does not improve your argument. This was Ryan. He knew how I took my coffee. Dark roast with a little cream and no sugar. He knew I always forgot phone chargers, hated driving through heavy traffic, and became strangely competitive whenever old rock songs came on the radio. After almost 10 years of friendship, there were probably things Ryan knew about me that I had forgotten about myself. We met during our sophomore year of college, when I accidentally took his seat in an economics lecture. Ryan informed me that he had been sitting there for 6 weeks. I told him there were 200 other seats. He sat beside me just to prove a point. Somehow that turned into lunch, then weekend plans, then apartments 3 blocks apart after graduation. By 28, I had given him a spare key to my place. He was my emergency contact at work. My mother sent him birthday cards. My father occasionally called him for advice about his laptop instead of calling me. When my relationships ended, Ryan was the person who showed up with takeout and listened without judging me. When Ryan changed jobs 3 years earlier and convinced himself he had made a terrible mistake, I sat on his apartment floor until 2 in the morning, reminding him why he had taken the chance. We never kept score. That was the best thing about us. "Tell me again why I agreed to this," Ryan said as he carried my bag toward the door. "Because you love me." The words came easily. They always had. Ryan stopped for half a second, then looked over his shoulder with a familiar, crooked smile. "Unfortunately." I laughed and followed him downstairs, never wondering why his smile had disappeared before he turned away. The drive from Boston to Vermont should have taken a little over 3 hours, but summer traffic stretched it closer to 4. We argued over playlists, stopped for gas, bought powdered donuts neither of us needed, and spent 20 minutes debating whether my uncle would once again bring his guitar and force everyone into a family sing-along. Somewhere north of Concord, Ryan asked the question I had been avoiding. "What exactly did you tell your family about me coming?" "That I was bringing you." "That is suspiciously vague." "My family knows you." "Your parents know me. Your extended family knows there is a Ryan who appears in approximately 80% of your stories. Probably 90. He looked out the passenger window. "That is not helping." I smiled because I thought he was nervous about meeting 40 Parkers at once. I had no idea there was another reason. By the time we turned onto the narrow road leading toward my parents' lake house, I felt lighter than I had all week. Family reunions usually made me tense. There were always questions about work, marriage, and whether I was seeing anyone. This year felt different because Ryan was beside me. With him there, I would not have to perform. I could simply be myself. My mother was already waiting on the porch when we pulled into the driveway. I climbed out first. Ryan came around the car carrying our bags, and Mom barely looked at me before her eyes settled on him. Her expression changed into a slow, knowing smile that I did not understand. "So," she said warmly, walking down the steps toward us, "this is Ryan." Beside me, Ryan suddenly went very quiet. For one strange second, I wondered whether my mother had forgotten that she had already spoken to Ryan dozens of times on video calls and had mailed him homemade cookies every December for the last 4 years. Then she hugged him like a relative returning home after a long absence. "It is so good to finally have you here," she said. Ryan glanced at me over her shoulder, clearly amused. "Thank you, Mrs. Parker." "Linda," Mom corrected immediately. "If you call me Mrs. Parker all weekend, I am going to feel ancient." Before Ryan could answer, my father appeared, carrying a pair of grilling tongs, and welcomed him with the enthusiasm usually reserved for someone arriving with free Red Sox tickets. Within 20 minutes, Ryan had been introduced to so many Parkers that even I lost track. They were cousins from New Hampshire, an aunt from Connecticut, my older sister Megan and her husband, their 2 children, and my grandmother Ruth, who sat beneath a striped patio umbrella, observing everything with the calm authority of someone who had spent 83 years learning exactly when to speak. Ryan handled the chaos better than I did. He remembered names after hearing them once. He helped Dad move folding chairs without being asked. He let my 8-year-old nephew Oliver recruit him into a backyard baseball game, and somehow managed to make the kid feel like he had just won the World Series. I watched from the porch with a lemonade in my hand, surprised by how naturally Ryan seemed to fit into a place that usually made me feel like I was being examined under a microscope. "He is good with Oliver," Megan said beside me. "Ryan is good with everyone." She gave me a sideways look. Clearly, I knew that look. "Do not start." I did not say anything. "You were about to." Megan smiled and walked away before I could interrogate her. The comments became less subtle by dinner. We crowded around 2 long tables on the back lawn while Dad served burgers, grilled chicken, corn on the cob, and enough potato salad to feed a small town. Ryan sat beside me because, of course he did. He had been sitting beside me at dinners for nearly a decade. Nothing about that was unusual until Aunt Carol looked across the table and smiled. "You two make a handsome couple." I nearly dropped my fork. "We are not a couple." Ryan laughed quietly beside me. "Definitely not." Something about how quickly he said it bothered me, although I could not explain why. Aunt Carol raised both hands. "My mistake." Grandma Ruth did not even look up from her plate. "Give it time." Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because that was easier than examining the sudden warmth climbing into my face. Ryan concentrated very seriously on his corn. Later, after sunset painted the lake orange and gold, Mom delivered the next surprise. "Small problem," she said, as Ryan and I carried our bags upstairs. "Your cousins took the guest room." "That is fine. Ryan can have my room, and I will take the couch." Mom looked almost offended. "Do not be ridiculous. Your old room has a queen-size bed." I stared at her. She smiled innocently and disappeared downstairs. Ryan leaned against the hallway wall. "Your family is subtle." "They are insane." I noticed. We entered my childhood bedroom, where old baseball trophies still occupied one shelf and faded college photographs covered a corkboard above the desk. The bed suddenly looked much smaller than I remembered. "I can take the floor," I said. Ryan set his bag down. "Ethan, we are adults. We can survive sharing a bed." "Right. Obviously." That night, we lay beneath the same quilt, facing opposite directions, with maybe 12 inches between us. I had shared hotel rooms with Ryan before. I had fallen asleep on his couch more times than I could count. This should have felt completely ordinary. Instead, I noticed every small sound in the room: the ceiling fan turning overhead, crickets outside the window, Ryan shifting beneath the blanket. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Then, in the darkness, Ryan quietly said, "Your family really thinks we are together." I smiled toward the wall. "Apparently." Another silence followed, longer this time. "Funny," he murmured. I waited for him to explain what was funny. He never did. The next morning, I woke to sunlight spilling through the curtains and found Ryan already standing beside the old corkboard above my desk. He was wearing jeans and a navy t-shirt, one hand wrapped around a coffee mug, while the other rested against the edge of a faded photograph. "You were a terrible photographer," he said without turning around. "Good morning to you too." I sat up and rubbed the sleep from my eyes. "Those pictures survived college. Show some respect. Ryan smiled, but his attention stayed on the corkboard. Most of the photographs were exactly what you would expect from 4 chaotic years of college. Crowded birthday dinners, football games, graduation caps, terrible Halloween costumes, and road trips we could barely afford. Somehow, Ryan appeared in nearly all of them. "Your mother kept everything," he said. "She considers throwing away memories of federal crime." I crossed the room and stopped beside him. Ryan had removed one photograph from the board. It was from our college graduation 7 years earlier. I remembered that afternoon clearly. My parents had taken us to lunch after the ceremony, and Mom had insisted on taking approximately 50 pictures outside the student center. In this one, I was facing the camera with a ridiculous grin, my graduation gown open and my tie crooked. Ryan stood beside me, except he was not looking at the camera. He was looking at me. "I do not remember this one," I said. Ryan immediately slid it back beneath the thumbtack. "It is just a picture. You look exhausted. We had barely slept for a week. You were also emotional. You cried first. I had student loans." That made him laugh, and the strange tension disappeared almost as quickly as it had arrived. We went downstairs, where the house was already alive with voices and the smell of pancakes. The morning passed easily. Ryan helped Dad repair a loose screen door, then joined Oliver and my niece Sophie by the lake, while I carried folding tables onto the lawn. Every few minutes, I caught myself looking for him without meaning to. It was automatic. I always knew where Ryan was in a room. I had never considered that unusual until this weekend. Around noon, I went inside for iced tea and found Mom in my old bedroom holding the graduation photograph. "Were you reorganizing my room?" I asked. She looked entirely unashamed. "I came up for extra towels." "Those towels must have been hiding behind a 7-year-old photograph." Mom smiled. Before I could continue, Ryan appeared in the doorway behind me. "Linda, your husband needs to know whether 20 pounds of charcoal is enough." Mom looked past me toward Ryan, then down at the photograph. Something softened in her expression. "You have always looked at him like that," she said. I turned toward her. "Looked at who, like what?" Ryan went still. Mom handed me the photograph before walking toward the hallway. "Your father needs me." "Mom." She kissed my cheek and kept walking. I looked down at the picture, then at Ryan. "What was that about?" "Your mother enjoys creating mysteries." His answer came too quickly. "Ryan." "Ethan, it was graduation. Everyone was emotional." He reached for the photograph, but I held it away from him, studying it again. There was something in his expression I had never noticed before. Something quiet. Something unguarded. I tried to name it, but Ryan took the picture gently from my hand and returned it to the corkboard. "Come on," he said. "Your dad is about to declare a charcoal emergency." Outside, the reunion continued as if nothing had changed. Children ran across the grass. Music drifted from a speaker near the porch. My relatives argued cheerfully over lunch preparations. Ryan walked ahead of me toward the backyard, and I told myself my mother had simply been teasing us again. Then Ryan stopped to help Sophie tie her shoelace, smiling as she talked excitedly about something I could not hear. I watched him longer than necessary. For the first time in 10 years, a question entered my mind that I had never allowed myself to ask. What if everyone else was seeing something between Ryan and me that I had somehow trained myself not to see? By late afternoon, I had almost convinced myself that the photograph meant nothing. Then Daniel Brooks walked onto my parents' lawn, carrying a blueberry pie and 7 years of complicated history. I recognized him before he saw me. He still had the same sandy blonde hair, the same easy smile, and the same habit of pushing his sunglasses onto his head when he was searching for someone. Daniel and I had dated briefly during our final year of college. We had never called each other boyfriends, but we had come close enough that our friends assumed it would eventually happen. It never did. After graduation, Daniel moved to Burlington, I moved to Boston, and whatever existed between us quietly became a memory. "Ethan Parker," he called when he spotted me. "There is no way." I laughed as he crossed the lawn and pulled me into a friendly hug. "What are you doing here?" "Your cousin Matt invited me. We still play basketball together." Daniel stepped back and looked me over. "You look good. You look exactly the same." "That better be a compliment." I was about to answer when I noticed Ryan standing near the grill about 20 feet away. He had been talking with Dad, but now he was looking directly at us. The moment our eyes met, Ryan turned back toward the grill. Something about the movement felt deliberate. Daniel followed my gaze. "Is that Ryan?" "Yeah." "Wow, you two are still attached at the hip?" I smiled automatically. "Pretty much." Daniel gave me a look I could not read, then carried the pie toward the porch. For the next hour, I kept noticing small changes in Ryan. Nothing dramatic. That was what made them impossible to explain. He laughed less. He stayed busy helping everyone else. Whenever I approached, he found another task. At dinner, Daniel ended up across from me, while Ryan sat at my right. Daniel told stories about college, including several I had forgotten, and my family loved every second of it. Then Aunt Carol asked the question nobody needed. "So Daniel, are you married?" "No." He looked directly at me. "Still single, actually." I reached for my water. Beside me, Ryan's hand stopped halfway to his glass. Daniel smiled. "Ethan, maybe we should grab a drink while I am in town. Catch up properly." Before I could respond, Ryan said, "You should go." I turned toward him. "What?" He kept his attention on his plate. "Have a drink with him. You've not seen each other in years." I heard what he asked. "Then say yes." His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it I had never heard before. "Why do you care?" Ryan finally looked at me. "I do not." The answer landed harder than it should have. "Right." I pushed my chair back. "Excuse me." I walked toward the side porch, angry without understanding why. A minute later, the screen door opened behind me. Ryan stepped outside. "Ethan, you have been avoiding me all afternoon. I have been helping your family. You know what I mean." He exhaled slowly. "Daniel seems nice." "You already know Daniel. Then you know what I mean." I stared at him. "What is going on with you?" "Nothing." "Stop saying nothing." Ryan looked toward the lake instead of at me. "Maybe I am tired." "You were fine until Daniel showed up." His jaw tightened. That tiny reaction told me more than his words had. "Are you jealous?" I asked. Ryan turned back so quickly that for a second neither of us spoke. Then he gave a short, disbelieving laugh. "Do not do that." "Do what?" "Ask questions when you are not ready for the answer." My irritation disappeared. "What does that mean?" Ryan looked at me for a long moment, and suddenly I saw the same expression from the graduation photograph. Quiet, unguarded, almost sad. Then the screen door opened and Mom called us back for dessert. Ryan stepped away first. "It means you should go have that drink with Daniel." He went inside before I could stop him. I remained on the porch, listening to my family laughing through the open windows, with one thought repeating in my mind. Ryan had never cared who I dated before. At least, that was what I had always believed. Dessert should have reset the evening. In my family, pie usually solved everything, or at least distracted everyone long enough to pretend it had. But Ryan barely touched his slice. He answered questions when someone spoke to him, smiled when Oliver showed him a card trick, and even laughed when Grandma Ruth accused Dad of ruining perfectly good hamburgers. Yet I could tell he was somewhere else. Daniel left around 9 after reminding me about the drink. I told him I would text him, mostly because Ryan was standing close enough to hear. The moment I said it, Ryan looked away. That should have made me feel satisfied. Instead, it made me feel awful. Later, while everyone gathered around the fire pit near the lake, Ryan disappeared inside. I waited 5 minutes before following him. I found the kitchen empty, but his voice drifted from the small mudroom near the back entrance. He was speaking quietly on the phone. Yes, I reviewed the written offer. Seattle works for me. I stopped. Ryan continued before I could convince myself I had misheard him. I have not accepted yet, but the proposed start date works. I can be there next month. My stomach tightened. There was another pause. The relocation package should cover the first month. I will call Monday with my decision. I stepped backward, and the floorboard beneath my foot creaked. Ryan turned. The color seemed to leave his face when he saw me. I have to call you back, he said into the phone. He ended the call. Neither of us moved. Seattle? I asked. Ryan slipped his phone into his pocket. Ethan, you are moving to Seattle? I was going to tell you. When? After the reunion. I stared at him, waiting for the sentence to become less impossible. Boston to Seattle was nearly 3,000 miles. Ryan lived 3 blocks from me. We met for coffee before work. We watched baseball on Sunday afternoons. He had a key to my apartment. Somehow, while I had been assuming those things would continue indefinitely, he had been planning a life on the other side of the country. How long have you known? I asked. A few weeks. A few weeks? My voice rose before I could stop it. You have known for weeks and never mentioned it? Keep your voice down. Why? So my family does not discover that apparently everyone knows what is happening in my life except me? Ryan's expression tightened. This is my job, Ethan. I know that. Then why are you acting like I need permission? I am not. The answer came immediately, but it did not feel true. I lowered my voice. I just thought you would tell me. I was trying to find the right time. We spent 4 hours in a car yesterday. That was not the right time. We talk every day. Ryan looked exhausted now. That is exactly why this is difficult. I stopped. What is that supposed to mean? He leaned against the counter and closed his eyes for a moment. It means I knew you would react like this. Like what? Like my best friend just told me he is moving 3,000 miles away? You did not let me tell you. You overheard a phone call. Would you have told me if I had not? Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. That hesitation hurt more than any answer. Wow, I said quietly. Ethan, please. No, I want to understand. You came here with me. You let me make plans for next month. You let Dad ask whether you wanted tickets to that Red Sox game, all while knowing you were leaving. I have not accepted the written offer yet, but you want to. Ryan looked toward the window. Outside, my family sat beneath strings of warm lights, their laughter carrying faintly through the glass. Yes, I think I am. The room suddenly felt too small. Why Seattle? I asked. It is a good opportunity. You have good opportunities in Boston. Maybe I need something different. Different from what? He finally looked at me. There was that expression again, the one I could not understand and was beginning to fear. From this. I felt my chest tighten. From Boston? Ryan shook his head slowly. You know that is not what I mean. I did not. Or maybe some part of me did, and I was afraid to name it. Then tell me what you mean. Ryan stared at me for several seconds before answering. What exactly am I supposed to stay for? For several seconds, I could only stare at him. What are you supposed to stay for? I repeated. Ryan immediately looked away, as if he regretted saying it. Forget it. No, you do not get to say something like that and walk away. Ethan, your entire family is outside. Then explain it quietly. Ryan gave a tired laugh. That is always your solution, is it not? Keep everything comfortable. Keep everything exactly where it belongs. I have no idea what you are talking about. I know. He walked past me and pushed open the back door. I followed him onto the lawn, but Ryan did not return to the fire pit. He crossed the grass toward the lake instead. Dark clouds had gathered above the trees, covering the stars that had been visible an hour earlier. Ryan, wait. He kept walking. I need some air. You have about 2 acres of air right here. Then let me have it alone. That stopped me. Ryan had never asked me to leave him alone. Not once in almost 10 years. I watched him continue toward the old boathouse at the edge of the property. Behind me, laughter rose around the fire pit, but it suddenly sounded distant. The first drop of rain landed on my arm, then another. Within seconds, the summer storm arrived, sending everyone toward the house. I should have followed them. Instead, I ran after Ryan. By the time I reached the boathouse, both of us were soaked. Ryan stood beneath the narrow roof facing the lake, his shoulders tense. Go back inside, he said. Not until you tell me what is happening. Nothing is happening. You are moving across the country. For a job. You have said no to jobs before. He turned toward me. Those were different. Why? Because I could stay then. The words came out sharper than anything Ryan usually said. I stepped closer. And now you cannot? He looked exhausted, not physically, but in a way I had somehow failed to notice for years. I cannot keep doing this, Ethan. Doing what? Being the person you call after every bad date. Being the person who knows when you are pretending you are fine. Being the person your mother sends Christmas cookies to, and your father invites to baseball games, and your niece asks to sit beside at dinner. I stared at him. Those sound like reasons to stay. Ryan closed his eyes. Of course you would think that. Then help me understand. Rain hammered against the roof between us. Ryan looked toward the house, where warm windows glowed across the dark lawn. Do you remember Michael? He asked. Your boyfriend from 3 years ago? He was not my boyfriend for very long. What does he have to do with this? He ended things because I had never given him a fair place in my life. I blinked. Because of us? He said there were 3 people in our relationship, and one of them did not know he was in it. My chest tightened. Ryan. Then there was Aaron. He asked why I checked my phone every time you texted. Chris asked why you had a key to my apartment. Every person I tried to build something with eventually asked the same question. His voice became quieter. Why was Ethan always first? I could not answer. Ryan swallowed and looked directly at me. I kept telling myself it was friendship, that I could handle it. Then you would date someone new, and I would smile and listen because that is what a good friend does. The realization came slowly, then all at once. Daniel. The photograph. Seattle. Every strange silence that weekend suddenly connected. How long? I asked. Ryan's expression changed. There was nowhere left for either of us to hide. Since we were 21. 7 years. The number seemed impossible. You have loved me for 7 years? His eyes filled with something raw but steady. Yes. I forgot about the rain. I forgot about Seattle. I forgot my family waiting inside. All I could hear was Ryan saying the one thing that rearranged every memory I had of us. Then he whispered, "That is why I have to leave. That is why I have to leave." The words settled between us, and suddenly, every version of the future I had taken for granted felt uncertain. Ryan looked away first. Say something. I tried, but nothing came out. 7 years. He had carried this through birthdays, holidays, terrible dates, Sunday baseball games, late-night phone calls, and hundreds of ordinary mornings when I had handed him coffee and never noticed what it cost him to stay beside me. I am sorry, I finally said. Ryan gave a small, tired smile. Please do not apologize for not loving me. Something inside me tightened. That is not what I am apologizing for. He looked at me again. Then what are you saying? I thought about Daniel, Michael, Aaron, the photograph upstairs. I thought about every person I had dated and the strange moment when each relationship started feeling like work. There had always been some explanation. Wrong timing, different priorities, no spark. But there was one conversation I had never forgotten. Do you remember Ben? I asked. Ryan frowned. The guy you dated last winter? He asked me something before we broke up. He asked what I would do if you called me in the middle of our anniversary dinner and said you needed me. Ryan went still. What did you say? I said I would leave. The rain filled the silence. Ben asked whether there was any situation where I would choose him over you. I could not give him one. Ryan stared at me. Ethan, that does not necessarily mean... I know. I spent years telling myself that. My voice shook now, but I kept going. I told myself you were family, that you were my best friend, that what we had was different because it was safer than dating. Ryan's expression softened, but sadness remained in his eyes. Friendship is not a consolation prize. I know that too. I stepped closer. But I think I used the word friend as a hiding place. Ryan stopped breathing for what felt like a second. I had spent years imagining love as something dramatic, something that arrived with certainty and changed everything overnight. What I had with Ryan had never arrived. It had accumulated. Coffee before work, spare keys, road trips, knowing his order without asking, calling him first with good news, looking for him whenever I entered a crowded room, building my life around his presence so gradually that I never noticed I had done it. Every relationship I had was compared to you, I said. Nobody made me laugh like you. Nobody knew me like you. Nobody felt like home. Ryan's eyes lowered. Do not say this because I am leaving. I am saying it because you leaving finally made me understand what I have been refusing to look at. He shook his head. You are scared. Absolutely. That surprised a quiet laugh out of him. This is not funny. No, it is terrifying. I smiled despite the pressure behind my eyes. Because if Daniel disappeared tomorrow, I would be fine. If any guy I dated disappeared, eventually I was fine. But when I heard you talking about Seattle, I could not imagine my life without you in it. Ryan looked at me for a long time. Ethan, loving someone because you are afraid to lose them is not enough. Then let me say it differently. I took another step forward, leaving only a few feet between us. I did not avoid loving you because I felt nothing. I avoided naming what I felt because you were the one person I could not risk losing. Ryan's face changed, disbelief giving way to something fragile and hopeful. All these years, I continued, I kept calling you my best friend because boyfriend sounded temporary. You never did. Ryan let out a breath that almost became a laugh. So we wasted 7 years because we were both afraid? That appears to be the embarrassing truth. This time he actually laughed, and I heard 7 years of tension inside that sound. Then he looked at me again. What happens now? I did not have a perfect answer. For once, I did not want one. Maybe we stop pretending we already know what this has to be. I am not asking you to reject Seattle or promise me a relationship tonight. I held out my hand between us. Maybe we start with the truth, then decide the next step together. Ryan studied my hand before placing his in mine. The gesture was not a contract. It was an agreement that neither of us would hide behind friendship or fear again. Ryan kept his hand in mine as the rain softened around us. For a moment, neither of us moved. There was no dramatic answer waiting beyond the boathouse. No guarantee that changing our relationship would be simple. Only the strange relief of finally standing inside the truth instead of circling around it. We should probably go back, Ryan said. My mother is going to send a search party. He smiled. Your grandmother will lead it. We started across the wet lawn, and halfway to the house I stopped. Ryan turned. What? I looked at him, suddenly nervous in a way I had never been around him before. There is one thing I do not want to overthink for another 7 years. His expression softened. I stopped an arm's length away. May I kiss you? I asked. Ryan studied my face, then nodded. Yes. Our first kiss was brief and careful, more tender than dramatic, and when we pulled apart, Ryan stared at me before laughing quietly. 7 years for that? I was nervous. Clearly. I can try again. Later, Parker. He squeezed my hand and pulled me toward the house. When we stepped through the back door, soaked clothes and all, the kitchen went silent. My mother stood beside the counter. Dad was holding a dish towel. Megan was carrying 2 coffee mugs. Grandma Ruth sat at the table with a slice of blueberry pie. Every pair of eyes dropped to our joined hands. I prepared myself for questions. Grandma took 1 bite of pie and said, "Finally!" Megan burst out laughing. Dad looked at Mom. Mom looked unbearably pleased with herself. Wait, I said. You all knew? Knew what? Mom asked innocently. Do not do that. She smiled. Ethan, sweetheart, You have mentioned Ryan in almost every phone call for 10 years. Dad nodded. You once drove 4 hours in a snowstorm because he had the flu. He was sick. He had a temperature of 100 degrees, Megan said. You acted like he needed emergency rescue. Ryan was laughing now, which felt deeply unfair. I pointed at him. You are part of this. Grandma Ruth looked at Ryan. He knew even less than you did. That ended the argument, because she was right. Later that night, after everyone finally stopped teasing us, Ryan and I sat on the porch overlooking the lake. The storm had moved east, leaving the air cool and clean. About Seattle, he said. My happiness tightened slightly. Right. I still want the job. I looked at him. Good. Ryan seemed surprised. Good? You should not give up something important because we finally figured ourselves out. It is nearly 3,000 miles. Then we buy plane tickets. He studied my face. You make that sound easy. It will not be. I leaned back in the porch chair. But difficult is not the same as impossible. Ryan smiled. When did you become wise? Approximately 20 minutes ago. 3 months later, I walked through Seattle-Tacoma International Airport carrying 1 suitcase and 2 coffees. Ryan was waiting near baggage claim, wearing the same navy jacket he had owned since college. The moment he saw me, his entire face changed. That expression was familiar now. I finally knew what it meant because I no longer looked away from it. Seattle had not separated us. It had forced us to become intentional. We called every night, visited in person every 4 to 6 weeks, alternating cities when schedules and budgets allowed, and learned that loving someone did not mean building identical lives. It meant choosing how those lives could meet. I had spent years believing the safest thing I could do was protect our friendship from change. I had been wrong. Some relationships do not become weaker when the truth enters them. They finally become honest. I thought Ryan had always been the person I could never afford to lose. What I eventually understood was simpler. He was the person I wanted to keep choosing, wherever life took us.